Alright, so now we're going to start into linear equations, which you guys are pretty familiar with. So we just want to go through again some of the vocabulary to make sure that we're all on the same page. So let me scroll this just a little bit. Okay, and so equation. Okay, you guys know an equation just means that it's a statement that has an equal sign. So let's just kind of formalize that definition. A statement that two expressions are equal. Okay? So an expression is just terms that are adding or subtracting. So now you just have an expression on either side or on both sides, and that equals makes it turn into an equation instead. Okay, so a linear equation has the word line in it. So that means that that equation is going to make a line. It's going to have more than one variable. So the definition for that is a linear equation in one variable. Okay? You could have one variable, but then the line would either be just either one direction vertical or one direction horizontal. Is an equation that can be written in the form ax plus b equals 0, where a and b are constants, and a does not equal 0, because if a equals 0, then you wouldn't have a variable, okay? So that's just saying, like a linear equation, like if we make those numbers, that maybe, as an example, 2x plus 7 equals 0, okay? You've got a is a constant, it's just a number. B is a constant, it's just a number, and it could be equal to 0. You could solve it equal to 0, which is very helpful when we get into some Algebra 2 stuff, okay? So a linear equation, if you notice it's got a term, we could graph that one term, and it could make a line for us, okay? So the solution, we know that solutions are answers, so formally, a solution, excuse me, let me rephrase that. A number is a solution of an equation if substituting, which substituting is one of our properties where you replace. If substituting the number for the variable results in a true statement. And the key to this is true. Okay, so if you think you have an answer or a solution, when you plug it back in, that's the phrase we use a lot. When you plug it back in, it works, okay? And when something works, we call it true. Okay, so we're going to be doing a lot of checking to make sure that things are true, because sometimes, especially in Algebra 2, you can get an answer, but then it's not true. So that's key in us working on these problems. And then equivalent equations are two equations are equivalent if they have the same solutions. If they have the same solutions. So the equations may look different, but if their solutions, if those answers that we get after we solve are the same, then they are equivalent. They just might be written differently, okay? So those are our definitions. Let me get out of the way. Okay, those are our definitions so that as we build on them, we're all on the same page and we all know what we're talking about, okay? So now let's look at the bottom of the page. The easier part is actually working out a lot of times. And you guys have been solving equations for years. So let's scroll this down. Okay, so here we've got some properties just to make sure that you guys remember whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So if we add the same number to each side, that is our addition property of equality, okay? The subtraction property of equality means we subtract the same number from each side. So if I add C to the left, I have to add C to the right. It has to stay balanced. It has to stay equal. If I subtract C from the left, I have to subtract C from the right. It has to stay balanced. I have to stay equal with it, okay? Same thing with multiplication and division. So the multiplication property of equality, we multiply each side by the same number as long as it's not 0, because remember, if you multiply anything by 0, you get 0. So if A equals B and C is not 0, then if I multiply the left by C, I also have to multiply the right by C. You just have to remember, whenever you work out equations, you have to do the same to both sides, because that way it stays equal. Same thing with division. So the division property, I can divide, or I have to divide each side by the same number. And again, it can't be 0 because you can't divide by 0. Those are just little rules about math that you guys know if you multiply by 0, it would cancel everything out. You guys know you can't divide by 0. So those are just little things just to stay true in these definitions, okay? All right, so now we're going to flip the page and we're going to work on some of these. It's going to seem probably easier to you.